Welcome very much to our Zoom meeting this morning, Indigenous Friends of Israel International Foundation. And we are so excited. I know we don't have too many people here right now. They are still coming on early in the morning, Australian time, but this time slot is specifically so that we can have our North American brothers and sisters joining us. And we do have a special treat later, Charles Huang joining us to share from California. And we have our wonderful speakers, Norman Miller and Dr. Isaac Balbin with us. And so the topic today is basically about Indigenous support for Israel, specifically about a declaration of solidarity of Indigenous and diverse people of the Pacific in support of Israel, which is available online and was launched on Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, recently. So there's still time to put signatures on there because it's new. You can put signatures as individuals or organisations. Tribes can be listed, and also Jewish people who are Indigenous to Israel, of course, can also sign it. So I'm going to now introduce the first speaker, Norman Miller, my husband, and he is of the Jirrabul, Barbaram and Wodjinbara Adinji tribes of the Atherton Tableland, North Queensland. His name is Mundine, which means mountain water, and that does happen to be reflective of the mountains and volcanic lakes of the Atherton Tableland. And he is sharing to us this morning from Cairns in Queensland, Australia. And he has led teams to Israel 12 times over the years and has led the Australia and Pacific and Asian delegations to the All Nations Convocation Jerusalem for about 7 years, some time ago now, and also led the Indigenous track at that conference and hosted over 12 conferences in Australia, 4 in in Parliament House, Canberra. And so he's also an artist and a pastor and an author of a book on Aboriginal art, his own art, actually. So over to Norman now.
Well, good morning and good to be here with you this morning, and to those that will come on fairly soon. I say good morning to each one of you for making this time. There's a scripture that I know through the biblical prophet of Isaiah in verses 51 to verse 5, and it says in that Bible verse that the islands will look to me, and that's something that I've always held on to, because what I will share is of how we, with a declaration that I will now read, and I just want you to just as I said, I know that there will be some feedback, some answers, questions that you may have asked. But this is a declaration of solidarity with Israel from the Indigenous and diverse communities of the Pacific Rim. We're the vibrant and resilient people of the Pacific Rim, encompassing First Nations of Canada, Pacific Coast, the First Nations people of the United States, Pacific Coast, the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander First Nations people of Australia, the Maori of Aotearoa, the native Hawaii, Kanaka, Maoli, the Ainu of Japan, and the rich mosaic of Asian, Polynesian, Melanesian, Micronesian, and Latin American cultures stand united in profound solidarity with the state of Israel and its people, brought together by Indigenous Friends of Israel International and also the Lions of Zion, a modern movement dedicated to fostering global unity and support for Israel. We represent a chorus of voices from every corner of the Pacific, declaring our unwavering love, admiration, and commitment to the Jewish state. We recognize the Jewish people as the indigenous stewards of the land of Israel, their ancestral homeland, where their history, culture, and spiritual legacy have been rooted for millennia. The indigeneity resonates deeply with our own connections to land, tradition, and resilience, forging a sacred bond between our communities and the Jewish people. We honor Israel not only as a homeland, but as a beacon of morality, kindness, and grace, a nation that exemplifies the highest standards of humanity in the face of unparalleled challenges. Indigenous peoples of the Pacific Rim not only have a shared indigeneity with Jewish people, but the shared experience of tribal societies, close family relations, attachments to land, and closeness to nature. We also have a shared experience of colonization, dispersion, ethnic cleansing, persecution, discrimination, marginalization, trauma, and need for resilience. Despite this, our cultures and spirituality remain strong. Spirituality remains strong. We applaud the Jewish people that they have been able to retain their religion and culture, revive their language, and decolonize their land with the rebirth of the state of Israel in 1948, forming the only democracy in the Middle East. The state of Israel, its people, and the Israel Defense Forces, the IDF, have constantly demonstrated extraordinary compassion, integrity, and courage. Time and again, Israel has been the first to extend a hand of aid during global crisis, particularly environmental disasters, delivering life-saving assistance with unmatched speed and generosity, from the earthquake relief in the Pacific to humanitarian missions worldwide. Israel's selflessness shines as a model for all nations. We celebrate this legacy of giving, which reflects Jewish values of Tikkun Olam, repairing world, and inspires us all. The state of Israel, its people, and I mentioned that. Sorry. To the people of Israel, we say, you are not alone. From the shores of Alaska to the islands of Fiji, from the rainforests of Papua New Guinea to the vibrant cities of Seoul, Manila, and Lima, our hearts beats with yours. The IFI and the Lions of Zion have united us in a shared mission to stand with you emotionally, culturally, and materially. We pledge ongoing support for Israel's right to exist in peace and security, committing to partnerships that amplify your voice, share your sorry. Share your wisdom and spread your message of hope, intelligence, and joy across all cultures. We celebrate Israel's remarkable contributions to humanity, its innovations, science, technology, agriculture, medicine, and its vibrant culture that bridges ancient tradition with modern aspirations. We stand in awe of your resilience and grace, and we commit to a shared responsibility to foster peace, mutual respect, prosperity for all peoples. This declaration is a promise. The Indigenous and diverse communities of the Pacific Rim, united by IFI and the Lions of Zion, will continue to stand shoulder to shoulder with Israel. Together, we will build a future where hope, wisdom, and joy flourishing, binding our cultures in a shared vision of unity and justice. Now, Barbara has the details there of this, the signing of this declaration, and so between her and Isaac, we'll be able to give you a little bit more information. I'm more of the practical, and Barbara is pretty much of the IT technical things. So what I wanted to share with you there this morning, it's been something upon my heart to see this declaration put forward and our conversation with Isaac and his family that was recently here in Cairns. And we had a wonderful, it was just like it's like as if we knew each other for many, many years. And when him and the family and friends that came up to Cairns, we shared they shared in a float that I had in the Cairns Festival. Barbara mentioned I'm also an artist, which 30 years of my business. I'm not a government granted, never been a government granted business, but I'm still there. And I probably will bring that discussion to some of the things I want to encourage you, but also that we can have, I'd like to be able to open up the gallery, the business, not only for artists that, especially from Israel, that would travel. And we know that it's been hard for Jewish people, artists, entertainers to be able to get a platform. Things just seems to be happening with the BDF and all those other things. And some of the things that we want to see, it's just sad that our government, the way that they've been behaving. I didn't mean to share this, but quite a few years ago, of course, we were talking about some political things. A few years ago, I actually stood as a candidate for the seat of Labor and in the federal election of 2012 for Leichhardt up in this election. I'll just put it in a nutshell. Julia Gillard at the time was the Prime Minister, and she wrote me a letter and she said to the endorsed candidate for Labor for Leichhardt, and her and her partner then at the time, Tim Matheson, they both sent me a letter and around Christmas and encouraged me and those types of things. But one of the things I had was one of their, he wasn't elected then, but he's a senator, and he came up to Cairns and he said, look, I want you to withdraw your nomination. I said, I'm not going to do that, in which I didn't. And I had a team working for me for the election of Leichhardt. And as you know, the election of Leichhardt is Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, very big area that it also covers from the Cape York to other places. Anyhow, one of the leaders in government of Labor came up and he said, look, I want you to withdraw. I didn't withdraw my nomination. And he said to me, I want you to withdraw. And they never gave me the reason. One was I wasn't a left faction or anything like that. I wasn't part of a union. But the main thing that they wanted me to remove me because one, I was a Christian, and the second was I stood for the values of Israel. I stood strongly there with Israel.
They did make that point.
They did make that point. And there was also other things that they wanted me to push on the of the two-state solution things there as well. Look, one of the things that I wanted to bring up to you with you is this whole Pacific Rim, and I'm encouraging, and I want to see the Polynesian, Melanesian, and what was the other? Micronesian nations come on board and to sign this declaration. It was in October, 1st of October 2013, at the United General Assembly in New York, and you know that when Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, spoke, and there was that number of people that walked out. That was, that all that there would have been orchestrated, and how such a disgrace that we see those things there happening. But when Prime Minister Netanyahu spoke at this in 2013 on October the 1st, and actually on this Wednesday, tomorrow, it'll be the 12 years of that when he spoke that. But he said, in our time, the biblical prophet that he spoke of in Amos 9:11, he says, in our time, The biblical prophecies have been realized. As the prophet Amos said, they shall rebuild ruined cities and inhabit them. They shall plant vineyards and drink their wine. They shall till gardens and eat their fruit, and I will plant them upon their soil, never again to be uprooted. The Prime Minister's message to those who would seek his nation's destruction was, the people of Israel have come home, never to be uprooted again. And as I said, I think it's a very importantly that we as the nation of Australia, the media, it portrays that there are voices of Indigenous people, of leaders like myself that are here. We don't get the platforms, but we are speaking out loud and clear. We don't have the platforms that media wants to pick up and take on. And many times that Barbara has put press release, hot off the press, on topics concerning Israel. And I remember this journalist from locally in Cairns. I said to him doing an interview with him, I said, look, we send a lot of presses to you at our local Cairns Post. What do you do with it? Do you throw it in the bin? And all he did was nod his head to say yes. So I want to just say that we have voices of Indigenous people from all these, Micronesian, Polynesian, and Melanesian nations, and there are many of them, but the media that they don't get. And I think it would be a good story for that platform to be able to run. I would like to see a page where the Australian newspaper picks it up and runs with it and takes it. I'd like to see many forget the ABC, they of their sort of wokey lefty types agendas, but we need to get something out there very, very soon. One of the things that is planning upon my heart, that Barbara and myself will be at the Never Again, a gathering that will be taking place in Canberra. And so we will stand shoulder to shoulder with those that stand strongly and support the Jewish people and our nation, and the values of the Judeo-Christian nation, which I think is so important. The plan is to take a large 2-meter boomerang and to be able to give it to Israel's ambassador to Australia, Amir Mon, to present it to him with signatures, not only online signatures, but signatures that I will also want to get signed on the back of that boomerang. And I want to, as I said, that will be on the 26th, 27th of October. We will be around in Canberra. So if you are there, maybe you also can or plan to visit Canberra at that time to not only catch up, but personally sign that boomerang. So what I will have on it also is this biblical scripture of Prophet Amos 9:11, which Benjamin Netanyahu had quoted in his speech and putting that there on, but also the other scripture from the Psalms of David, where we'll have Psalms 122, and that scripture talks about standing in the gates of Jerusalem. It talks about the tribes, not only the tribes of Israel, but you can think of First Nations, of Indigenous people all around the world, the tribes that they also come from and align themselves in that very spiritual and prophetic way, but also as nations, especially Christian nations all around the world, that stand and pray for the peace or the shalom of Israel. So that scripture also will be on that boomerang. So the aim would be to give it to Amir Mon, and whether he delivers it on our behalf of Indigenous Friends of Israel and Lions of Zion, to take it to Israel with the declaration also to be sent, or Barbara and myself would be there with a delegation, whatever it might mean. So that's something that we want to see happen. This declaration was something that was unfolding in my heart for some time, and I sense that it needs to be out there. It needs to be, good stories need to be written. I, like yourself, just so tired of of what's happening on our streets, and the government has lacked that control of the streets of our nation. And the government has, as you can see, has sided its ways, and with these wokey type agendas and movements that's happening. So what we need is the strength of the people like yourselves that are here today, but also I would say to my family in the Pacific of those nations, and it's good to have Charles here with us there this morning, that I'm sure that Charles, that you can help really stretch this tent peg of this declaration and the context that we have. I think that's something, as we see the number of ships, I think we can see the people movement, and that's what it has to, what needs to happen is that momentum shift that we take back the good things, the good values that we, I ask myself, and many of you within Australia, you ask and say, is this Australia that I love? Is this the Australia that I was born in? And we need to get back. We need to get back, and because the Jewish people, they've done so much for our nation. And as I said to them when they come up to Cairns, I say, you are not alone. You have family here. I am your family. And so I hope and pray that you take these things that are on of the declaration. Barbara and Isaac, through time, will share of that next step that you need to take and how you can get other peoples to come on board. And I think this could be a great movement that we all want to see and good things come about.
So thanks very much, Norman Munganbana. I'm now going to introduce Dr. Isaac Balbin, and he has a PhD in electrical engineering, where he had a great amount of success writing stories, winning patents, and publishing research, winning awards. After graduation, he started down an entrepreneurial track and exited from his first startup business a few years later. Currently, he has founded two businesses in the medical cannabis sector, including a product brand and a medical clinic. So Dr. Balbin is also one of the founders and leaders of Lions of Zion, a grassroots Zionist movement founded in 2024 in Melbourne to protect the community against threats faced by Jews and their allies. And so we are very happy to have you speak now. So please go ahead and very welcome.
Thank you so much, Barbara. I blush every time you do that introduction. I'm gonna have to send you a shorter one that says less things. But no, look, really happy to be here. And look, for I guess those who don't know, I can tell you that I met Norman and Barbara when they came down to Melbourne on a mission that was pure heart. Um, Backed by education and facts, which is just the kind of thing that, it inspired me. And when they were down here in Melbourne and we spoke about the importance of the union between Jewish people, Indigenous Australian people, just common Australian people, the it's one of those things where that link between, Jews and Australia, it's sometimes unknown. We were on the first fleet. We weren't in charge of the ship, let me tell you that. And um, for one interesting fact, which not a lot of people actually know about, is that Australia is the only country in the world, other than the state of Israel, where Jews actually signed the founding document of that country. And obviously, during its history, we've had many prominent Jews contribute to society, like John Monash and things like it. And, so I've had people come and talk to me and address my identity and say, well, you're more a Jew than you're an Australian. Well, let me tell you, I don't feel that way. I've got to for the whole period of my life, I've always, whenever I've traveled anywhere in the world, thank God that I live in Australia. And up until COVID times, that thought never got troubled. But all of that to the side, leave the political troubles, to somewhere else. I think that there's a beauty in the spirit of the people of this great nation and how they actually interact with each other, and it would be a tragic thing were we to lose it. So um, I'll just jump in here now. Look, I'm acting right now as president of the Lions of Zion, just a group of grassroots people that got together because we were sick of Jews being intimidated and people, not standing up against it down in Melbourne. And I'm proud to say that ever since we went to the city that one time to stand up against pro-Palestinian protesters, 12 of us stood silently with signs and had thousands of people. It felt like baying for blood. And were there not a police line between us and them, I think they would have got what they wanted. But today, I'm here really to talk about this declaration, and it was something that when I first got to sit down to have a coffee and cans with Barbara and Norm, we start talking, and through that, Norman puts up this idea of because I start telling him about, the feeling of being alone that the community really does feel quite strongly, particularly here in Melbourne. And as I was expressing that, Norman starts telling me about, well, this community supports you, our community supports you, all these other communities support you. And as we're talking through in that conversation, there's this idea, well, what if we just wrote a declaration that was was human and common enough that any single Indigenous tribe should be able to feel comfortable signing on to it. And what a powerful symbol something like that would be to inspire and give hope to the people that are battling away under the most trying of circumstances. And really, part of the ethos behind it is that the declaration is based on shared stories of resilience. Indigenous people in all different parts of the world, as Norman and Barbara were reading about the Maori and, Canadian First Nations, the Kanaka Maoli of Hawaii, the Ainu of Japan, and, so many other indigenous communities around the Pacific Rim and around the world, um, all have that common struggle where they're connected to their land. And it doesn't matter if you take those people and you put them in a different place, for a few years, for 10 years, 100 years, a couple thousand years, doesn't matter. They won't lose that connection to that land. And I think that, the communities that we're speaking about, like the Jewish people, they're indigenous. And it's not just tied to the land, it's tied to a culture, to a spirituality. And it means that you know what it is to endure colonization, displacement, persecution, and discrimination. Um, and that's why we thought that really it was so important that we put this declaration together and have as many different communities sign it, simply as Norman was saying earlier, that people understand that they are not alone. In today's world where social media is able to control the narrative, so often, or traditional media as well, um, there can at times be a pervasive and overwhelming sense of being attacked from every side, no matter what you do. You make your best effort to do the right thing again and again and again, and you're condemned for it. And that makes it challenging to continue to try and do that right thing. I can remember as a young man when Israel returned the arch terrorist Samir Kuntar to Hezbollah. And I mean, this is a guy who committed, it was unspeakable acts. He smashed open the head of a young boy in his family home in front of his family. The man's a monster. I mean, again, like objectively, but somehow when he went back to his community after being exchanged just for the bodies of two IDF soldiers, um, celebrated in the streets, and you feel like a sucker. You're like, why are we doing this? We're letting people celebrate evil. We're actually facilitating it. but that's always superseded by that respectful life. And it is just such an important thing that community actually feels those bonds together so that it's strengthened and resilient enough to be able to go through some of those tougher times. And so you might ask, why spend time and effort and energy on this declaration? It's just words on a page, what does it really matter? But here's the thing, words do matter. And declarations shape narratives, and they remind us and the world who we are and what we stand for. So, in this declaration, at a very simple level, it recognizes Israel as the ancestral homeland of the Jewish people and affirms their indigeneity. And you would think that something like this is not controversial. But in today's day and age, we live in what people like to call a post-truth world. The truth of things doesn't matter. We'll spin a nice narrative, but I think there's still enough good people out there that are determined to find the actual truth of things, and so it's important that we declare them. It also draws a sacred connection between the indigenous people of the Pacific Rim and the Jewish story, of an indigenous people thrown out from their land for millennia. And when they come back, the resilience of those people led to the revival of a language that hadn't been used for thousands of years, other than in books and things of that nature, but not really as a spoken language. And the nation was, rebirthed in 1948. And that culture has survived and flourished in the face of great adversity. And this declaration also commits us to ongoing solidarity. Um, because, look, today it's happening in the state of Israel. Tomorrow, next year, in 10 years, who knows where it will happen? And I think that it's important that these mutual bonds are built because they will be the best bulwark against that a similar type thing happening and people not caring about it. I mean, the plight of some people in Nigeria at the moment is horrific. It doesn't get any play in the media because it's not that interesting here. But there's people really suffering, and probably should be a discussion. Should we help? What should we do? It's not okay that people just accept that bad things happen out there. I think as good people, it's incumbent on us to do something where we can. We're not going to be able to do it all the time, and that's okay. But it's the ethos and the idea behind that. Now, the other question you might ask is like, why would I come over here, wake up early in the morning, to get on a Zoom and talk to good friends about, what we're doing and what we're like trying to get people to sign on to. And the reason is that these declarations only have power when they're owned by people and when they're spoken, when they're signed, and when they're shared. Myself and Barbara and Norm, like we're not doing this just so people can make empty statements. We're really interested in building a chorus of voices that stretches across oceans because every name that signs onto this document strengthens it. Every community that embraces it magnifies its reach, and every leader that repeats its words gives it new life. And that's why I'm here, and that's why I've come to do this. And last night, when we had the first version of this session, some wonderful people came up with brilliant suggestions on how we can help spread this good word to take it far and wide and make sure that it gets the attention that it needs and it deserves. Um, and so, for example, one gentleman spoke about making petitions in Parliament so that the parliamentarians would need to address the declaration and either support it or otherwise. But then potentially we would be able to get parliamentary support for the declaration in various parts around the world. And each one of these declarations of support will build on the previous one and make it easier for the next one to sign on to it. I also just want to pause here for a moment and just like speak about Israel for a moment. It's a place that has enormous challenges. And even with the difficulties of the last 2 years, and look, I can tell you on October 7, when we saw things happening in real time, within an hour or two of the tragedy starting, there were videos on Telegram being shared that put myself and my wife, quite honestly, into a state of shock that took months to recover from. It felt like we were just floating through life at that time, that um, the stories that we had been told, and keep in mind that, you know, with Holocaust surviving ancestors that not just escaped the Nazis, also escaped the Soviets. It's something where when you come to to a place like Australia, it's a sanctuary. These things aren't supposed to make their way over here. And but for better or worse, it has. And look, my mother back in November, just after the October 7 tragedy, made this comment and said that she felt safer walking the streets of Russia during Soviet times as a Jew than she did here in Australia. And the sanctuary that Australia has been violated by all of this hatred. And rather than join them and add to the chorus of hatred that's being spoken on the streets, let's turn that around and let's build let's build uh, connections in communities that are based on joy and goodwill. And ultimately, I think we'll be able to prevail, getting past some of the, for lack of a better term, the nastiness that's out there. And so, Israel, having gone through such a tragic moment, um, it didn't allow itself to stoop to the level of dismissing its moral ideals. It was still important whenever they went out to fight. And I mean, I don't know any other army in the world that takes lawyers into battle, but hey, it's like, I guess it's good to be special sometimes. Um, they showed incredible compassion and innovation. They they thought through ways to be able to protect people and get them out of war zones because quite frankly, not many wars have been fought in history by a side that was so callous towards its own people with a lack of caring for their death and beyond a lack of caring, almost a celebration where they see it as part of a march to a greater goal. Um, Even during that time, Israel's still one of the first countries to come when people call for aid at the time of a natural disaster, um, including along the Pacific, offering aid with incredible generosity. And, as Barbara Norman mentioned earlier, there's this concept in Judaism called Tikkun Olam, means to try to heal the world. Um, but it's not just a meaningless declaration. You're supposed to live it out in direct action. And then at the same time, the advances in science and medicine and agriculture and technology are not for the country itself. Look, Israel, for better or worse, developed this incredible technology to protect the population from missile attacks. They created, this Iron Dome, and it's an amazing tool. Um, and now they've even got the Iron Beam. I don't know how many of you know about it, but everybody who laughed at George Bush when he talked about using space lasers, well, now we've got them, and they're shooting down drones and missiles and keeping people safe and protected. Um, and all of these innovations are really to bless the world, while holding on to a resilience, reviving a language, rebuilding a nation after centuries of exile, and trying to act as an inspiration to every Indigenous community around the world struggling for recognition and renewal, that they shouldn't be afraid and they just have to believe in themselves and fight in that cause. And if they reach out, there are willing allies willing to stand with them. Um, as one of the other leaders and founders of Lions of Zion, Yaakov, often likes to say, we don't ever want to go and ask people to go and stand for us. We only ever want to ask people to stand with us. Because if we won't stand for ourselves, how can we ask someone else to do so? And so at the moment, I want to make an ask for those here today, for those who will watch at some point later. Read this declaration. And if you haven't, um, it's not easy, it's not hard to find. Um, and if you feel that you agree with its sentiment, make your voice heard. Sign it, add your name. Share this declaration. It's not something to be shy of. It's something that can be taken to people's networks, to your communities, to your leaders. Let other people know that this movement exists. Speak it. Use the language in this declaration in forums, in councils, in classrooms, in parliaments. It's there to be shared and used for good. And then stand with us, because when we stand together, we cannot be broken. And every time this declaration is spoken, it gets stronger. And every time it's shared, it gets harder to ignore. I also just want to make a point about some of the brilliant and beautiful ideas that come out of the incredible mind of Norman Miller about what we'll do with this declaration once it's created. Once we're done, we're actually going to create a physical artwork that will contain the declaration. Many of those, it will contain who signed it. Obviously, only people that are willing and able. As Barbara was talking to me the other day, it was something I didn't even think about, that it may actually be quite dangerous for some people to be publicly associated with this declaration. And we don't want that to be a barrier. So we're never going to publish anyone's name, anyone's tribe, without their explicit permission. But for those who grant it, we will put them loudly and proudly on that artwork and take it around the place, create digital versions that people can download, put on their socials, keep a printed copy for themselves. And then beyond that, even, as Norman and Barbara were talking earlier, I really get those vibes that came back when Michael Jackson did his We Are the World song, which was really just an idea to bring people together through the beauty and the power of music. And so, if we are creating a declaration that has many Indigenous peoples coming together, why not also make a song? And make a song where we can share the sounds that come uniquely from these Indigenous communities and help people recognize them and respect them. We can talk about blowing a shofar from a Jewish perspective. We can talk about playing a didgeridoo from Aboriginal Australian or Indigenous perspective. We can talk about playing drums. There's music and joy and good spirit available, and when we can bring it together, it becomes something beautiful and inspiring. Um, and just lastly, before I close off here, when the Jewish people reclaimed their land in 1948, it was more than a political act. It was an act of cultural survival, spiritual renewal, and Indigenous revival. And so when we, as people living here on the Pacific Rim, put our names to this declaration, we're doing something similar. We're saying that our histories of trauma will not divide us, they will unite us, and our resilience is stronger together. That's why we put this declaration together. That's why we're spending time promoting it, because it's more than a statement, it's a promise. A promise that Indigenous and diverse peoples across the Pacific Rim will stand shoulder to shoulder with Israel, and Israel will stand shoulder to shoulder with them, because together we can build a future of hope, wisdom, and joy. Thank you for listening.
That's wonderful and inspiring. Thank you so much, Isaac. And now we're going to hear from Charles Huang from California, USA. So he's a Taiwanese-American, originally born in Taiwan, part Taiwan Indigenous Pipu tribe of Taiwan. His father was a physician, medical doctor in Taiwan, and so is his mother, also in the medical field. He is a 10th generation Chinese descendant from Fujian, born in Taiwan. His maternal grandmom was born in Canton and moved to Taiwan during her teen years before the communists took over China. He grew up in a Buddhist family and became a follower of Yeshua at the age of 16 and prayed for his family members, and a majority came to faith in Yeshua, Jesus, today. He moved to California at 13 years old and had a supernatural Pentecostal experience at 16 while attending a Presbyterian church, and became a follower of Yeshua at the same time, has been living in California for about 40 years, has been to Israel 25 times, Taiwan, New Zealand, Australia, Finland, Netherlands, South Korea, Canada, England, Turkey, Indonesia, and island of Patmos, Greece, 2 times in UAE, Dubai, Sharjah, Egypt, and Kingdom of Jordan. So he's certainly a traveller, isn't he? Founder, President, and CEO of Roots and Branches International Ministries, Fremont, California, a ministry with a vision to bridge churches and Israel with God's love and restore the biblical truths about Israel and the Hebraic roots. This is from February 2016 to the current. And a councillor, founding chairman, Israel Fellowship, South Day, Agape Christian Church, San Jose, California, 2013 to the present, and so much more. So we really welcome Charles Huang with us today. Thank you, Charles.
Hey, shalom. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Pastor Norman, for inviting me. Though it's a short notice. As a matter of fact, last night I was with my Taiwanese indigenous friend, Pastor John Chen, who's the founder of Minorities for Christ International, and he represents 16 tribes in Taiwan, reaching out to nations, reaching out to the minority tribes in the 1040 windows. And I was invited to their 20th anniversary celebration last night, and meeting with a lot of Taiwanese indigenous brothers and sisters. So really am very happy to hear of your support for Israel coming from Australia. I remember years ago, I had actually met with Pastor Norman during the first Jerusalem prayer breakfast in Australia, when I was invited to visit the Parliament of Australia and also to be in Canberra for the prayer event for Israel. And I believe that the Australia has a very important role in the end times in supporting Israel. And I was just in Israel about 4 months ago again, in between the missile attacks. And for the first time, actually, I had to go to the bomb shelter on the day I was leaving Israel at the Ben Gurion airport, when Israel got attacked by a big ICBM missile, intercontinental ballistic missile, that came from Yemen. And I heard the siren go off at the Ben Gurion airport. And I had to go to the nearest bomb shelter for the first time, experiencing what the Israelis are going to on a daily basis. And if you've been watching the news, Israel is still at war, self-defense. Today is 725th day, I believe. Yeah. And then, so I am part Taiwanese indigenous, and I was just actually I visited Taiwan. Every year now I visit Taiwan and visit Israel by God's grace. And I was invited to the in a very important event in Jerusalem last year, set up by the Indigenous Embassy of Jerusalem. How many of you are aware of this embassy, the latest? Well, okay, Barbara, I see your hand. So it is actually recognized by the state of Israel as equivalent to a government embassy like all the other nations. And so we have an embassy in Jerusalem now called the Indigenous Embassy. And I was with the 2 directors, Dr. Sherry Trotter, who is from the Maori tribe in New Zealand. And also there's a member of the parliament, a former member of the parliament from New Zealand that is also a co-director. So they and we were welcomed by the former Mayor of Jerusalem, who's now the deputy mayor of Jerusalem, and some of our indigenous leaders were had the opportunity to meet with the president of Israel. I was there because my spiritual mom, Grand Chief Linda Prince from Canada, had invited me. She adopted me years ago as her spiritual son. So I do see a very key role that the indigenous leaders from the nations will play in the end times. A very key important role. So we are now in the year, we just started year 5786, Rosh Hashanah, Feast of Trumpet. I also want to thank Dr. Isaac Balbin from Lions of Zion. Thank you for sharing. It's nice meeting you. And I'm also, as we are in this week, this is called, I said many of you know, we are in the 10 days of awe in between Rosh Hashanah, Feast of Trumpet, and Yom Kippur, when all the people, Jewish people, and God's also calling the nations to repent, until Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement coming up next week. This year will be October 2nd, and then I know that you're all Bible scholars. We will have Sukkot, the Feast of Trumpet. Feast of Tabernacle, coming up on October 7th for 1 week, the most joyful feast of all, the most joyful feast of all the Jewish high holy days. So I see that Israel, my short sharing would be as resilient nation, Israel. A resilient nation. A definition is resilience from Oxford Dictionary: the capacity to withstand or to recover quickly from difficulties, toughness. An example of a bounce back punching bag. And I see Israel as such a nation. I mean, how many wars they have gone to in the past? At least 14 wars. Now they're going to 15 wars. Since 1948, the Arab-Israeli War, outnumbered, attacked by 6 nations. Israel won. 1948 to 1967, the Fedayeen War. Israel was attacked by 4 nations. Again, Israel won. 1967, the Six-Day War. Israel was outnumbered, attacked by 6 nations, and Israel won. 1967 to 1970, War of Attrition. Israel was attacked by 4 nations. Israel won. 1973, the Yom Kippur War. Israel was attacked by 4 Arab nations, and Israel won. 1971 to 1982, Palestinian uprising in Lebanon. Again, Israel was attacked by 2 nations groups, and Israel won. 1985 to 2000, the Lebanon conflict war. Israel was attacked by 2 nations, and Israel won. 1987 to 1993, the first Intifada. Israel was attacked by 2, and Israel won. 2000, 2005, the second Intifada. Israel was attacked by 2 groups, and Israel won. Now, 2006, the Lebanon War. Israel was attacked by 1, and Israel won. In 2008, the first Gaza War. Israel was attacked by 2, Israel won. 2012 Israeli Gaza operation, Israel was attacked by 2, and Israel won. 2014, the second Gaza war, Israel was attacked by 2, and Israel won. 2021 Israeli Gaza crisis, Israel was attacked by 2, and Israel won. 2023, the Israel Hamas war, Israel was again attacked, and today is day 725, and guess who will win? You know the answer. Behold, he who keeps Israel neither slumber nor sleeps. Psalm 121, verse 4. And during Israel's Hamas war, I actually had the opportunity to visit Israel 3 times. And in between the missiles. And I can tell you that I can feel the heart of Israelis. Their hearts are broken. They're brokenhearted. A lot of people lost hope. And when I walk on the streets, it's very easy for me to talk to any Israelis, IDF soldier, and I usually get this answer, "Why are you here?" And I say, "Well, because my Messiah was born here." And they have a lot of curiosity. You know, the fact that I go there during the time of war, it's a great comfort for them. And that's what the people of Israel need. This goes with all the Israelis, no matter if they're religious or not. and then last year when I went there to attend the Indigenous Embassy Israel event, well, we had the opportunity to visit where the conflict started, the southern part of Israel, at the very place where more than 1,200 Israelis were killed. And I, along with a number of indigenous leaders from the nations, from Fiji, from Canada, from Turtle Island, that's the original name for North America, we gathered there with our Jewish friend. It was Pastor Avi Mizrahi's wife, and his daughter, and they were crying. Mrs. Mizrahi, she was crying. She said, "Why do the nations still blame us for starting the war? Even the churches don't understand us." And I had to apologize on behalf of the churches of the nations for not standing with Israel, not praying for Israel during the time of Israel's hardship. This is they feel so much misunderstood by the nations, including the church. And that's why I commend you for what you're doing. You're signing a declaration to support of Israel. It's part of that. It's very important. And so I remember one time years ago when I visited the U.S. Holocaust Museum in D.C., I saw this written on the wall. And I quote, "First they came for the socialist, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionist, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me." It was written by Martin Niemöller, a pastor in Germany in 1892 to 1984. He was a prominent Lutheran pastor in Germany. In the 1920s and early 1930s, at first, he sympathized with many Nazi ideas and supported radical right-wing political movements. But after Adolf Hitler came to power in 1933, Pastor Niemöller became an outspoken critic of Hitler's interference in the Protestant church. He spent the last 8 years of Nazi rule from 1937 to 1945 in Nazi prison and concentration camps. He finally decided to speak out, even though he was a sympathizer with Hitler. So may God bless you for the work of your hand, Pastor Norman and Barbara. And I believe we can link arms with many other indigenous leaders in Turtle Island, and also right now that we have an embassy in Jerusalem. And I'm sorry because I received a short notice. I was not able to invite many people, but I know a number of indigenous pastors and leaders. I did inform them joining us. Maybe they will watch the replay after this meeting. Thank you. God bless you. Shalom.
Thank you so much, Charles. That's
You're welcome.
absolutely wonderful that you could join us and speak at short notice this morning. We have intended for a while to have our Zoom in a North American time zone so that Indigenous people from Turtle Island, from Canada, the US, etc., can actually join the Zoom. And because of the theme of the Indigenous Declaration in support of Israel, we had to bite the bullet, so to speak, and actually have this Zoom seminar on twice. So this is the first time in this time zone, because we actually had it in Australian time zone last night with quite a good number of people attending. But I do ask that you would help us to increase the audience of North Americans. We've got quite a few on our mailing list, but we need to increase that so that they can sign the declaration and so that we can be in regular contact. And yes, we are supportive of the Indigenous Embassy Jerusalem. We had planned to go there last year, and the Australian government issued a no travel to
Really?
Israel
Wow.
because of the war, so we didn't end
Wow.
up making it. And
Yeah.
Dr. Cherie Trotter actually did cancel some of the events and just held the academic symposium and
Yeah.
the march. So
Well, actually, it was still on.
wonderful you could make it.
I participated in the march at Jerusalem. It was on, and the symposium was still on. I was part
Yeah,
of
that's
that.
what I just said. Yeah, only
Oh,
the other events were cancelled, but the academic symposium and march was still held. So
yeah.
wonderful that you could be there for that.
Yeah,
So
I
look,
know
what
that
I
I
want to,
heard like
sorry,
more than 300 people, the indigenous leaders were invited, but only 30, about 30, about 30 people show up. And 7 of them were from Taiwan, actually. I was
that's
one of
all.
them.
That's absolutely awesome. So we're opening it up now for questions and comments. So can we have any questions, please, to come forth now? And Warren, it looks like it's going to be you. Would you like to make a comment or ask a question? Would you like to unmute? Everyone can unmute.
That'll be a good start. Unmute. Yeah, look, it's interesting times. I was just looking at some media stuff at the moment in regard to what's happening in Gaza in the peace process, seeing how things were going. Look, it just seems to be the same old, going around in a circle. The Americans and Israelis, other Arab nations agree, and then Hamas just says, nah. Or we'll look at it and then just draw it out. Anyway, but the important thing for me, I'm going to be speaking in a couple of weeks in Melbourne at the Never Again forum. And it will be an important time. You know, I pray to God that hopefully some miracle can happen and there will be peace and the hostages are released. But at the same time, I'm a realist, but I still pray for that to happen. The thing for me is looking at what Australia and the United States, not the United States, the United Nations, and that are moving is a bit scary for us. I've been a very outspoken person in regard to this war, which was started on the 7th of October, and people should never forget that. I was over there just before Christmas in Israel, and I went down to the southern Israel, and it was a bit of a personal journey for me as well. Besides the fact of going there to see what happened and talking to people, I spoke to the father of Shani Locke. This was one of the toughest conversations I've ever had in my life as a father. And seeing the war zone and sewing and that. The other personal part about it was one of the people who was killed down there. He was we were doing some work for some Aboriginal communities here in Australia, Indigenous communities, and him and his family and wife and everyone was killed during that that massacre on the 7th of October. So to me, it's about I will continue my personal and push for things in Australia. I went to the march across the bridge in Sydney, and I wore a T-shirt that said "Never ever again, release the hostages." People ignored me, but but I didn't cause any trouble. I just stood there, and I'll always stand there for what is right. I think what is happening in the Middle East is, this is, I think, a major point in history and time. I always talk about Hamas and Hezbollah and people like that, and because I don't talk about using the word the Palestinians in that regard, because there are Palestinians, I've met them, who are in the IDF, and I've met soldiers and I've met the police and had conversations with them, Muslims and Christians, and they were very strong about their beliefs in the state of Israel and the freedoms and things they enjoy, which they would not enjoy in Gaza or the West Bank. So I think of those. So I always talk about the real battle is for us is the releasing the hostages and dealing with Hamas and making peace in that area. The people of Palestine, the Palestinians everywhere, the Israelis deserve peace, deserve to be able to live together. People of Lebanon, I've been up into Lebanon as well. The people of Lebanon need to have their country back. I've spoken to many Lebanese who say that they believe they should have their country back and they should be living in peace in that region. You look at when I was there last trip, it was during the height of the Syrian war, and I was up in the Golan Heights and I saw the troop movements. I saw civilians trying to get across the borders into Israel and trying to get into Lebanon to get away from that battles and fights, and they deserve peace as well. The Syrians deserve peace, and Iraqis and so on. I'm hoping that we finally come out of this at the end of the day, and I pray for that we do come out at the end of the day, that we do have that peace. I see the answer through the Abraham Accords. I see that's the first steps for these things to happen. I think it's very important. I'm very disappointed in some of our allies in how they have acted in the recognition of the Palestinian state without even having who is the government, who's the borders, so it's really a reward for the terrorists for their work, what they did, and that was a nice word I used. It was a horror of what they did. So anyway, we'll see what happens. I'm just hoping that something can become of this. To release the hostages, Hamas needs to surrender unconditionally, and then we can start moving towards real peace. God bless.
Mm. That's wonderful, Warren, and how brave of you to go on that Sydney Harbour Bridge with a T-shirt about releasing the hostages, etc., and support for Israel. Awesome.
Look, I just, it's it's not rocket science. What happened on the 7th of October and the horror, which I thought of that, as well as what happened at the Opera House in Sydney a few days later. It was, I'd never thought I'd ever see that in Australia. I never thought that the authorities and the politicians would, quite frankly, just let that happen. And because from that very moment in Australia, we've got our fellow Australians living in fear for their lives. This should never have happened in Australia. It should never ever happen. Anyway, I hope that our politicians learn the lesson of, because social cohesion in Australia is at a very low. And last week I met with a friend of mine. He's a Lebanese Muslim. We went out to Western Sydney and had meetings with some of the Arabs out there, the Lebanese community, Christian and Muslims, and about we're talking about, okay, why don't you blokes, what are not supporters of Hezbollah, you don't support Hamas, and maybe we should arrange some meetings with the Jewish community and stuff, and start bringing this social cohesion back together again in this country. They like the idea. They've asked me to, and I've got to go do this week. I'm going to follow it up about having meetings so that the Jewish community in Australia know that there are people in the Arab community and the Muslim and Christian community that actually, are friends of the Jewish community in Australia, that we're all Australian and that we should be standing together. So anyway, that's my next thing I've got to do this week, and start those conversations and that, and start bringing people together, because the last 2 years have been pretty horrific.
That's wonderful. So Norman and Isaac, have either of you want to comment on that, or Charles?
Just quickly, I want to it's interesting you mentioned that event outside the front of the Opera House where
Yeah,
a crowd of people chanted "Gas the
yeah.
Jews," right?
That's what they did. I have
and
friends in that restaurant, and they said that's exactly what they said.
it's obvious that's what they did, right? Like, like no one chants "Find the Jews." Like it's anyway, it's silly. But here's the problem. Because the police decided to take that approach of, oh, let's just pretend it away. Let me tell you, there's a school in Gippsland where a young Jewish boy and his family have had to leave because all the other kids in the school started bullying him and chanting "Gas the Jews" anytime he'd come around. So we haven't gone out and made like a big stink of this thing because it's just going to negatively impact that community quite badly if we were to do so. But evil flourishes when good people do nothing. And so,
That's
Warren,
right.
I want to commend you, like the going and doing that sort of outreach and trying to connect between communities is it's holy work. And I just want to say that if there's any way that, I mean, if you want us to come down officially as representatives of a Jewish organization, happy to do so. If you'd like help, I know you are connected with many of the prominent people in the community already, but there's always more. And so please don't
There
hesitate to
can
reach
never
out.
be not enough.
That's
We
it,
go,
right?
yeah.
But I'm
Look,
just saying,
I love that. I'll take that offer, because, as we say, we're in very early stages of the conversation, and I had several meetings before I said, okay, let's start reaching out, because I didn't want any false starts that could set us back. But now I think, after the conversation today, I'm actually going into Victoria soon as well with Moya Deeming, going down there, and we're going to be reaching out as well with, because during the 2022 state election, there we did actually go into the mosque and had conversations with people, and we just want to take that back up again and see where we go with that process. Because at the end of the day, we're all human beings, we're all God's children. We Australians, all of us, and we shouldn't. We should. And you're 100% right. Isaac. That's what's really shocked me the most, because I have a good relationship and working relationship with the police. I was really the misstep they did there, and I'm being kind. Misstep was it's led to all this disaster. And anyway, we're good always conquers in the end. So I'm very optimistic that we can get things done.
I like to say it's not a struggle if we're winning the whole time. So, it's okay that.
And I'd like to ask Warren if you have some advice for us about this declaration, about how to get some traction on it. Thank you.
Well, it's some way about how we get to the media, really, and social media about it, because that's the new forums that we got to work through to to make change. I'll give you an example because, as you know, I was very heavily involved in The Voice. One of our biggest successes was actually social media. How do we use social media a lot, and get messages out to different groups? One of the biggest problems we have in Australia at the moment is because of, let's be blunt, the universities. I had two daughters at Sydney University during this period. They said it was horrible at Sydney University, where people were coming up in their face and saying, "Which side are you on?" What do you mean? And they said, "What do you mean? Which side are we on?" And it was very threatening. So, and they're two Aboriginal kids, so you can imagine what was happening to the Jewish kids at that university. So, we've really got to start reaching out to. I'm not saying it's not happening, but reaching out to young people and that, because they got some really weird stuff. Like everyone, there's that joke, there's stuff about queers for Palestine. I put up the other day, 2 days ago on social media, I put back queers for Palestine. When are you going to stand up for Palestinian queers? If you're really fair dinkum about this stuff, because as we all know, we know what happens to queers, the homosexuals and gays and everything in those parts of the world. So we've got to get our message out. And just continually talk about it. Someone mentioned just was it Bornhofer and his comments. One thing I live in hope of, and I feel optimistic about. Like even in Nazi Germany during the Holocaust and that, there were some people who stood up and fought for a difference, and I think that's what we've got to keep on doing.
Well, listen,
Lauren,
like I was inspired by William Cooper. Sorry, just like when I went up and met Barbara and Norm, I found out about this William Cooper. I didn't know about it before. I grew up
Oh,
here.
William Cooper, yes, good one.
Like,
Yeah.
I mean, what an incredible man. I mean, I'm in the back of my head, I'm trying to think about some sort of William Cooper commemorative march to stand for Australia, because that man embodied all the good things that we're fighting for here.
Yeah, and you think about you think about it. When I first learned about it when I was a kid, I just thought, wow, that's amazing that at the time that Aboriginal people were living under the segregation laws, that he still stood up, and he was like nearly 70. He stood up and he marched with his people down to.
They weren't allowed to have a drink. They had to
weren't allowed
give,
to drink, weren't allowed to
right? Like
vote, and all
even
that
then,
type of stuff. Yeah, and I just sort of go, wow, that is an amazing. And it was really, was it 2006? I think 2006. Yeah, I went to the Holocaust Museum in Jerusalem, and I was walking through just as a tourist. I just went there as a tourist, and so it wasn't and I was with a bunch of other tourists walking through, and then the tour guide just said, "Oh, here's a thing. Here's this exhibition of William Cooper," and I sort of went, "What?" And it was, I never felt so proud. It was so incredibly proud to be there, and they spoke about him and what he did. Some, like, it's always nothing's too small. You think, oh, well, I do this, and is it really going to make a change, or is it really going to make a difference? And just from that William Cooper story, I don't, I don't believe that even the tiniest thing, what he did was not a tiny thing; it was massive. But when you put it on a global stage, like, people wouldn't have heard about it. In fact, even people in Australia didn't heard about it. But it was something that was incredible. And so no matter what, you just keep on going and keep on doing things, and eventually, you make the difference, you make the change. That's what happens.
Absolutely. Look, Charles wants to come on and say something, but before he does, I just want to ask you, Warren, what if we had some public event where you actually signed the declaration, because you can get the media in a way that we can't. Would that be a possibility of setting up
that could be
something like that?
that could be a great idea. I think that's a great idea that we do that we do stand up for what is right. Yeah.
Mm.
Okay, so let's work on
Yeah,
that.
let's work on it. Yeah, let's work on
Mm.
something like that. And
Warren,
I could
just
probably do
a
another couple
question
of
also, just with the in relation to the media, the CPAC that you recently had. Could CPAC be a vehicle? And I know you mentioned that you're looking around about 1,500 in Sydney. You think that you could push CPAC to have a panel of the concerns, especially from, I mean, we give support to Sky, and that I think what could be missing on Sky is that they probably need to have a panel there of Indigenous leaders that do stand for. And if they could look at a panel of people within, I mean, Australia is like a multicultural. We know that, second
yeah,
to
it
Israel.
is.
I think what we could look at, and if yourself being in the position could push CPAC, give it the strength that you could see possibly of something like that for Sydney. But also if there could be a panel, whether it's on Sky News television, that there could be a panel of Indigenous people, because the narrative of what's been said is, we've got, as you know, the sovereignty movements and those I don't want to name that push that stories. I think it could come out in a positive way, and with Sky, that's very strong with support for Israel. So what I would like to see, putting it to yourself, if you can bring that where there would be a panel for CPAC, it could be on CPAC's agenda for next year, and I think that could be
To talk about what?
Oh, we could just talk about the voice of Indigenous people that do stand strongly for Israel, and to push it, but bring it from those, also a panel of Micronesian, Polynesian, and Melanesian nations that could really echo. And I think I just as I said, I'll bring it to you because I think CPAC could be a good vehicle with the connections that you have. Also with Advance, it'd be something that I would like to to be put to put forward. But also if there could be a collaboration of leaders, Indigenous leaders. I mean, we had Marcia Langton on here there last week, and we had a good number of people. We heard her speak at a gathering with two other Indigenous leaders in Melbourne in the last month. I think that there is the scope for that to take place. So I'm probably just saying that because there could be, it could be the vehicle through CPAC if it's allowed the opportunity
Dissenters good
for
too.
I
yeah,
know.
yeah.
Dissenters good on Israel.
Yeah, look, that's a couple of things that come out of that. Sorry, Charles, I'll just finish this quick saying, have you say, is one, we're actually looking at some regional, when I say regional, it's like, New South Wales, Victoria, Queensland, and that, Western Australia, events. And I think that we're having our debrief from the conference this Thursday. So I'll raise that too about looking at, okay, we're going to do these regional events, looking at topic areas. We should have one of these. We should have at least one of these as involved in that and talking about these issues. The second part too is one thing that disappointed me was seeing the Aboriginal flag at those marches. Because as you and I know, a vast majority of Aboriginal people are supportive of Israel. And not just that, but of Jewish people as a whole. And so that was a very disappointment. So it was great to see Nova. And so and you can see that in the bipartisan approach. Nova was the Labor Party senator. You got Marcia Langton. Marcia Langton was on the Yes campaign. I was on the No campaign. So it is across the Aboriginal political and personal areas that the vast majority of Aboriginals are. In fact, I can't even think of anyone who isn't, but are massive supporters of our Jewish brothers and sisters, and we want to make sure that all Australians are treated decently, our Jewish brothers and sisters, and they should not be living in fear in this country. And this is a country for all, as I said, multicultural, multi-faith. I always joke that, multicultural, multi-faith, we even allowed atheists in. But it's a great nation, and we should not be what is happening should not be happening here. And so, look, I agree 100%.
So just the
Anyway.
next question there, Warren. Will you be in Canberra around that time there?
It's going to be in Melbourne.
No, the 26th.
October 26th.
Oh,
He's in
okay.
Melbourne.
Yeah, I think I'm in Melbourne. I just checked my diary, 26.
Yeah, so the Never Again is Now rallies are all over Australia.
There's one happening in
26th.
Brisbane.
Oh, yeah,
around the
I'll
same
be
time.
in Melbourne.
You're speaking in Melbourne. We'll be
speaking
in
in
Canberra.
Okay.
We better just go on to Charles.
Yeah, Charles, yeah, we're holding
Okay, sorry. I just like us, if you don't mind, I would like us to pray. Father, I praise you. Thank you for allowing me to meet with the leaders from Australia. And I pray, Father God, that you would really raise up many leaders across the churches and government, business that would stand with Israel. Raise up many Esthers and Mordecais and Daniels in those positions of leadership, of influence to make Australia a sheep nation, Father God, in the end times. Lord, we know we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, as it mentioned in Ephesians chapter 6. And you said, my house shall be called a house of prayer for all nations. Father, I pray that you would just raise up intercessors throughout the great nation Australia that would daily pray for Israel, but also pray for Australian, other people in Australia, both Indigenous and all the Australian people, to have a love and a genuine understanding of your heart for Israel, and that would link arm together. The churches in Australia would be united together for Israel, and you would speak to the hearts of leaders, and that even there'll be fasting and prayer meetings throughout Australia, and there'll be daily prayer meetings, intercessions for Israel and Australia, and the churches there will be united. You said, my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and turn from their wicked ways and seek my face, and will I heal the land. Hallelujah. Father, I pray that you will also heal Australia, bring the different ethnic groups together in unity. Father, thank you. In the mighty name of Yeshua, I pray. Amen.
Amen.
So just
Amen.
the thought that I
Thank
have,
you.
because in our ministry, we have like in California, we've been doing a prayer meeting every morning now. Started, it was 7, but we decided to do it even earlier, 6:30 in the morning. Every morning, Monday to Friday, we pray for Israel, pray for America, Taiwan, and the nations. So I encourage you to do that also in Australia, because it's really spiritual warfare, really. It's not like I mentioned, Ephesians chapter 6 says we're not fighting against flesh and blood. This is spiritual warfare, because the Satan doesn't like Israel. He wants to wipe out the Jewish people in Israel. So we need to really cover Israel with our prayers and then advocacy afterward. We need both. The prayer intercession is like the Air Force. And then what you're doing is advocacy is like the army going out. So we need both. We need the spiritual Air Force. You
Thank
need
you.
pray for God to raise up spiritual Air Force people that would really be the watchmen on guard for Israel. Just like I've been to Jerusalem House of Prayer for Nations also many times, and then I know there's at least 10 prayer centers in Jerusalem. They cover Israel every day. Not all of them are 24-hour prayer
Yeah.
centers, but maybe you want a few. So this is the key. It's prayer and action. Yeah.
Yeah.
So never
Yes.
go without prayer. And then Yeshua talked about fasting prayer. He didn't say if you fast, but he said when you fast. He did not say if you fast, but he said when you fast. so
Yes, thank you.
fasting is
We do
very
have
powerful.
all of that going in Australia too,
Yeah.
and
Maybe
wonderful what you're doing.
to also add that too, because Israel faces war coming from 7 directions, and so I just want to add that too. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. There's a lot of prayer going up in Australia. So with the Indigenous Friends of Israel, because we have people coming on who are Jews, who are Christians, and people of no faith, we don't generally pray during our seminars, but we certainly pray in our own time, and we do join other people who are praying. So, point taken there, Charles. Thank you so much. So, is there anyone else who wants to say anything before we end up finalising the wonderful session this morning? Small but powerful.
Only thank you all. You're all brilliant.
Thank you all too.
Thank you.
Thank you
Yes,
all.
thanks very much
Thank you
for
all. Thank you.
taking this time.
Thank you.
And I pray that you all have a wonderful, wonderful rest of the week and enjoy and stay safe, and you and your families. Shalom.
Thank
you,
you.
Pastor
Shalom.
Norman and
Warren, we
Barbara.
know how
Shalom.
busy you are. So great. And that you could be with us. And Charles, can you say hi to Linda, Grand Chief Linda Prince for us?
Next time I see her.
Okay.
And thank you, Isaac.
Shalom,
the best.
shalom. God bless you.
Thank you, Isaac, for speaking. Norman, thank you, each one. Bye.
Bye then.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you.